If we're going to attempt to repair British politics, we have to look at what went wrong. I mean, even if a person has something wrong with them, we go to a doctor for a diagnosis to see what went wrong. Same with a vehicle. Modern day cars go on a diagnostic machine to find out what the problem is. Well, we need to find out what the problem is, and some of us, especially reading this thread, will already know what the problem is, and it dates back to pre-1997 to Tony Blair. Because when this man came to politics, he was astute, driven, superficially likeable. He appealed to a lot of people, not particularly me, but he did appeal to a lot of people. And he was determined to turn the political system that we rely on, which is built on trust, into something that cannot be penetrated by our willingness to show that lack of trust. So what he did effectively, all the procedures in place through democracy, the parliament being handed sovereignty from the people on trust to implement our needs, has been changed. It's been replaced really with a firewall between the electorate and the people that should be accountable, because now everything's handled through quangos and organisations like the WHO, like Ofcom, Ofsted. It's all been decentralised from government so that these bodies are not accountable to the electorate. They don't actually, with no comeback. We can't say that we don't like the way they're being run, handled, the way they're paid with government money, because it is our money. All these things that are set up are funded by the taxpayer, who get little or no say in what goes on. Back in the day, the Tony Blair changed British farming forever, the beef farming anyway, and he made it more favourable to an EU approach. Now what we've got Tony Blair seemingly noticing that Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband are going way too far, too evangelistic with their approach on this race to zero, and he's trying to calm it down. This doesn't mean he's turned into a good guy. This means he notices that what he's built up could get demolished, and it's getting demolished actually. That's why Reform have won 10 councils. So what you're going to look at, the pushback now with these councils being audited on what they're spending the money on, and batshit bonkers ideas they've adopted, waste on a massive scale. It's now beginning to show, because for once we've got people in a powerful position willing to be transparent with us. Dame Andrea Jenkins is living proof of that. She's quite prepared to have every single meeting she has recorded for public sharing. We've not had this before. We've had everybody in this closed shop that have been guarding their own backsides, making sure that they keep a lid on all the goings on. Andrew's now discovering a form of nepotism, I believe, where people have got jobs for the boys via council appointments. Reform are going to make some mistakes because they're new, and inexperience will show through. But if in the hands of the experienced ones, we've seen abysmal council spending focusing on glory projects instead of common sense. If we have utility companies that haven't got the common sense to build reservoirs to store water, and yet in a damp climate like the British Isles, which is an archipelago in the North Atlantic, which has exceptional rainfall, and yet we have water shortage. Well, we don't have shortages, but we have hosepipe bans in the south. Austria, for instance, southern Austria, has very dry summers and it has abundant rainfall. But guess what? They capture it. There's no hosepipe bans. In fact, there's a discount on water for your garden because they want you to look after your garden to make the areas look nice. They have a completely different approach to the people. We were basically ignored. What we need and want is brushed off as we don't know what we're talking about, and we've got this new era of a Labour Party that is nothing to do with Labour as in workforce, and it's got everything to do with middle class to upper class, socialist, I'll call them Lovites because they're Lovies who like socialism. And they actually believe they are the Labour Party. They actually believe, how can you sit there when you're getting £1.9 million to film a series and tell the working class that what the government's doing is a good thing? It just doesn't make sense, does it? How can you fly back on a private jet to talk about activism for the climate? Very difficult to take these people seriously. So what you've got to look at with Tony Blair, he is, you know, when I make these comments like Tony Blair still runs Great Britain, it might sound a bit off the cuff, but everything is put in place, every single thing that we struggle with, from immigration to legislation on tax for energy to the size of our food bills, stems back to legislation that Tony Blair implemented when he was in office. And all that needs to be undone. And it can be undone. It will be undone at first at council level. And with the 10 councils that Reform have control of, allow them their misdemeanours. They're going to make them the new. But I'd rather have someone new making mistakes than someone experienced making money out of my taxes and someone experienced not prepared to listen to both sides of science when it's needed. Just following a government narrative because it's a lucrative decision to make. That's how you get council money. I want to see councils that want local businesses to thrive, not come up with legislation that basically impedes them. That's why your town centres are full of charity shops, because real businesses can't afford the rents and can't afford the rates. And the way the rating office runs now for businesses, there used to be a rating officer in each town hall. Now there's only 4 in the country, so if you've got any problems, your backlog is 12 months. And in that meantime, if you've got any problems, if you feel you're being charged too much on your business rate, you've got to keep paying them at the increased rate until somebody finds time to tick box and sort it out. We really have lost the plot in Britain. In other countries, in places in Austria, there are discounts for businesses opening. There are opportunities. But we seem to be completely shutting retail down. Our town centres becoming like ghost ships because nobody can afford the rents. We need to turn it all around so that the town centre should be the hub of the society where people want to come, mix, meet with their friends, get a bite to eat, even street vendors. Things need to be promoted to survive, not neglected and left to die. So I think we're going to see a new era now with these councils. I think these council wins mean a lot more than people realise. I think this is the beginning of unpicking all the work that Tony Blair implemented. It has to be done across the board with farming and everything else, but I think we're on the road. I think we're on the road to making vast changes that can make it easier come 2029 to get rid of this terrible, terrible government. Don't forget to subscribe. Nearly forgot. I've got a reminder here on a post-it note. Don't forget to ask them to subscribe. It's free. There'll never be more than the 2 ads that you can knock off anyway at the beginning. I'm not interested in this as a big time earner. And you can look back at any of my videos. A lot of them aren't time sensitive. It's just sharing knowledge, ideas, and finding out what you think too.